And for and against Hagel at the Pentagon. Let's start with an Afghan war veteran, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Schaefer, friend of the program, and now with the Center for Advanced Defense Studies, and Jon Soltz, a two-tour Iraq war vet and chairman of VoteVets.org. Tony, let me start with you. Do you like the pick? Is this good for America?
Yes, it is. I think the fact that he is maybe, as you point out or said, a man with no party means that he speaks the truth, and I think it's what's most important to going forward realistically here. My conservative friends and my liberal friends all like him because he has been one who actually speaks truth to power. You may not always agree with him, but the idea is, and especially now, Tori, what we're talking about is going forward through a very difficult time, trying to pick a path to both update the Department of Defense. I think Panetta's strategy that he announced in December was abysmal. It is not helpful. It's status quo. And frankly, we need to have someone who can come in and actually make things work. He knows the Hill. He's a soldier. He's been in combat, and he knows the Pentagon. I think he's the right guy to do the job.
John, Tony brought up that he was a soldier. There's a good argument to be made for having a civilian at the top of defense or as a commander-in-chief because perhaps it keeps us from going to war less easily or less often. But what do you think about having a soldier who's been there and done that at the top of defense?
I think this is the best nomination the president's made in both of his terms. I don't think there's any doubt about that because he is controversial, and that means that he stands for something. You know, Chuck Hagel's someone who I've known since 2007 when we were arguing against a troop increase in Iraq. And I can tell you, on a personal level, especially even if you read his book, this is a guy who cares what happens to the soldier or the Marine on the ground who's embedded in combat. So I think in the coming months in Afghanistan, where we have green on blue killings, where we have this question of projection of force and embedded with Afghan troops, this is someone who's going to say, is this worth the sacrifice? And so there was this large debate that happened in Washington, D.C. Prior to the increase of troops in Afghanistan. And Hagel quietly was on the side that was against the president's plan of sending more troops. And I think he looks right. And this isn't just a shot. Lindsey Graham calls it it's in your face sort of announcement. It is in your face to neoconservatives, and that goes to neoconservative Dems and neoconservative Republicans, because this is a realism argument that people like I believe or Colonel Schaefer versus a lot of nation-building interventionists who think people like me should continue to fight wars promoting democracy in the far end corners of the world.
Well, John, Hagel has served in war. He has also voted to send soldiers to war. And I think history probably is not going to look too kindly on all of those yes votes for the Iraq war back in 2002. But Chuck Hagel cast one of them. But what I think is so interesting about him is he really grappled with that as the years went on and as he came to sort of reassess that vote. And I think it really changed his foreign policy philosophy, his philosophy about intervention and about war. I wonder, when you look at his evolution over the last decade and you look at the issue of Iran, which is going to loom large over the next 4 years, how do you think his evolution over the last decade will affect how he approaches Iran?
Well, I think it's good.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I think it's going to be very pragmatic by the fact that, military commanders will tell you there's no good military options regarding Iran. Therefore, you've got to come to a solution which will really exhaust every option before we go to war. I think Chuck Hagel is the best guy to look at those things realistically. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to step on.
What do you think, John?
Yeah, look, I mean, when you meet Chuck Hagel, the most important thing to him, the most defining moment in his life is his service in Vietnam and his brother's service. They served together. Chuck Hagel was wounded twice, once with shrapnel in the chest. If you go back to his Senate testimony when he was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and they were debating the surge in the early part of 2007, he sat there and said, look, if you can't take the heat, go sell shoes. He cares about the infantrymen. And so when he looks at Iran, people ask me all the time, as a Jewish American who served 2 tours in Iraq or served in Kosovo, deployed 3 times, like, how do you feel about, are you on this side or are you on that side of this war and conflict? And I always answer the same thing. I'm on the side for peace. In my entire adult life, basically all I know is war. I've been in war. My brother's been to war. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and it defines your life, and you can't extract it. And Chuck Hagel's never been able to extract his Vietnam experience. And it's not just about how he sees war in the future and saying we're going to talk to people before we fight them. It's what he did for the troops when they came home. I mean, he led the fight. There's a reason we call it the Hagel-Webb or the Webb-Hagel GI Bill. I mean, he passed this GI Bill in the Senate, which allows our kids to come home and go to college for free at state schools. So he's been a tremendous advocate on our issues that are important to us.
Tony, Dianne Feinstein, Democratic senator, just came out in support of Chuck Hagel, but there are a bunch of Democratic pro-Israel leaders like Chuck Schumer, Bob Casey, Ben Cardin, Frank Lautenberg, Carl Levin, who have yet to weigh in and might have some concerns. There's also Bob Menendez, who's sort of the pro-Iran or the anti-Iran hawk at the Foreign Relations Committee. Talk to them about their concerns right now.
Well, I think that I've looked hard at the statements on the internet and the blogs and what he's actually said. Chuck Hagel said, look, my first obligation is the United States. I took an oath of office to defend the United States Constitution. That does not mean he's anti-Israeli. I took the same oath. I feel the same way. I have Israeli friends. I support the Israeli nation and defending themselves. However, you have to look at what's best for this nation first, and how that somehow becomes anti-Semitic, I don't know. And yet that's what the issue has been, as far as I can tell, regarding the rhetoric against Hagel.
John, another issue that's come up of concern, particularly among those like me on the left, is Hagel's comments that he made back in 1998 opposing President Clinton's ambassador or nominee to be ambassador to Luxembourg, calling him openly, aggressively gay. And I know that he's recently apologized for those comments. I also know that you were really instrumental in getting Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed. So how do people who support equality for the LGBT community, and how do progressives in general sort of square those comments with supporting Hagel's nomination?
Well, we obviously were involved in supporting, a lot of the LGBT community. Our argument was that if you served in Iraq or Afghanistan 3 times and did a great job, why are you getting kicked out when, we keep getting redeployed? And I think that Senator Hagel will support the president's policy with LGBT equality. And I think that Senator Hagel did a great job to apologize for it. I mean, let's be honest, it wasn't an appropriate statement. It certainly isn't something that I agree with. When it comes down to the issues in the Pentagon that are important, like nuclear waste, like the fact that we've got discretionary spending in the budget and we're going to have to cut somewhere, when it gets down to the fact that we've got troops embedded in combat in Afghanistan and the president's let's be honest, the president's policy in Afghanistan has not worked. Chuck Hagel is someone who can fix that. So when it gets onto those core issues, I think that's what's most important. The LGBT issues, I get it. I think he apologized, and I can only, ask the community as someone who's been their huge ally to give him a chance. In regards to the Israel issues, again, he's the Secretary of Defense, and there's core issues that need to be dealt with at the Pentagon. And a lot of this stuff is smoke and fire to create some type of political show that doesn't need to happen when our troops are in combat and they need a guy who understands their experience like Chuck Hagel.
All right, Jon Soltz, Tony Shaffer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.